Hi, today I'm going to show you another game against Garry Kasparov from 1997 Novgorod, a very nice tournament. I think it took place only 3 or 4 times, 4 times, I think, but it was a very, very pleasant, nice event with top players, nice atmosphere. Unfortunately, then there was economic crisis in '98, and I think that was the reason why this tournament didn't continue for longer. Sorry to show you another victory, another mating attack against Garry Kasparov. It's not my fault. No, I'm not trying to pretend anything with it. It just happened that actually, I've played many games. Of course, we played with Garry, and I won 5 games in classical chess altogether during the whole career, and actually 4 of them ended up in a mating attack. Very, very rare coincidence, but and also since Garry, of course, is an amazing player, maybe best in the history, or at least definitely one of the very few challengers for this title, so to say. In order to beat him, you needed to play extremely well, and that's why, well, basically all games I won against him were played by me, one of my best games. And it happened to be that maybe, well, because his defensive skills were a bit inferior to his attacking skills, and that's why maybe that was the only reason, the only way for me to beat him, especially in the '90s, and that is why, I was somehow the only thing I could do is to mate Gary, and strangely enough, I would manage it from time to time. So yeah, and I think that was quite a nice game. Quite instructive, and at the end there was quite a beautiful combination. Especially, it makes it even more beautiful when you play it against the world champion and the best player at that time. So yes, I was right. It was actually a tournament of 6 players, double round. Who was playing? It was me, Gary, Nigel Short, Boris Gelfand played there as well. And I suppose 2 more players. I don't remember exactly already whom. And yes, finally, Gary still managed to win this tournament. I was second, but I managed to beat in our direct encounter 1.5 to half Gary. In fact, I was even close to winning in the second game with Black, but didn't manage. So in all, was a good tournament for me. But Gary, nevertheless, even losing this game against the main concurrent in that particular tournament, he still, of course, managed to win it, as most of other tournaments he played. I played knight f3, and Gary was still playing King's Indian at that time. I think that was one of the last years he actually played King's Indian, and if I remember well, in his interview, later on he said that he was, actually, after also this game, and he lost against me in some other game which you've seen earlier, so he decided that is just too risky opening for a very top players tournament, and he started to switch to Grunfeld then and other openings. But anyway, of course, King's Indian is a perfectly playable opening. I mean, objectively, let's say white is probably better, have some advantage there. But you don't play King's Indian to equalize. You play King's Indian to get a complicated position or sharp, and to outplay your opponent later on. So, I mean, it doesn't mean if Gary dropped this opening, it doesn't mean that any of you must do the same. No, it's perfectly playable opening, and even I myself tried from time to time to play it with Black without too much success, but still, I remember I won quite a nice game in King's Indian against Gustafsson in Dortmund some 10 maybe years ago. So anyway, it's playable. It's possible to play it. Nothing completely wrong with this opening, but still, So in this game, it didn't work out well. So we are playing, at that time I used to play this bayonet already attack before. Knight h5 is the main move, and now rook e1. So that was I think it started to become popular sometime around 1994, 95. And actually, it looks very strange, but it's a very dangerous move. And I think Blake is still suffering, to equalize fully in this position. Well, I mean, it's a very, very serious test against this classical King's Indian. I can tell you a funny story about it because actually, yes, this move could have been uh, more popular, become more popular already earlier than 94, 95. I think 95 was the first time it was played, and then everybody started to pick it up and started to play it. And I won many nice games actually in this opening, but it was my own fault that this move was only introduced that late as 95 because I remember in 1993 I had a training session with Evgeny Bareev, my good old friend and a very top player. He's top 10 player also at that time. And we were checking different openings, and again, there were no engines, at the time. So, and he had shown me against Kinsini and said, I have this strange idea that before knight h5, rook e1, and then maybe if knight f4 somewhere, bishop f1, and then if f5, knight g5. So everything actually according to the modern state of theory. And I remember I told him, no, but Genio, I mean, no, this just cannot be what rook e1 in King's Indian. It just doesn't, it just cannot be good. It cannot work, really. And unfortunately, we tried to move pieces to kind of, I had black. I told me, okay, give me black. I will just try to refute this rook e1. And I played a couple of game 5, knight f4, and somehow he didn't do well against it. And okay, I was getting better quite soon, and then we decided after like 20 minutes of moving pieces a bit, no, this is too much. No, that is not going to work. Yeah, and we forgot about it before for a couple of years. So so actually this is the idea of Evgeny Bareev in the early 90s. But anyways, so the move is quite dangerous. Of course, the general understanding of chess openings and of chess game, certain chess patterns in general is advancing all the time. It's improving, and some things which were supposed to be not so good now, slowly they, especially with engines, they rediscover some new ideas. And so this concept of playing rook e1, because before it was like a must to try to remove the knight at some point to d3 or d2 and then to play f3. I mean, not in this particular position, but in general, And also letting black knight on f4 was supposed to be not right. Therefore, the main move was always g3 here before. But rook e1 is actually, In fact, the point is that in case of, let's say here, knight f4, white just goes bishop f1. And this knight on f4 is seemingly well placed, but it's not doing that much actually. And here also, if I remember correctly, black cannot even really do f5 because white can take and play e5, and the white is just much better here. So that's why actually the main move after rook e1 in theory is f5. This is the main move. I played many games here, knight g5, and I think some players like Alexei Shirov played knight f4 against me. It was, if I remember correctly, Tilburg 90 something, 97 probably, or 98, I think 97. And knight f6 here, I played bishop f3, f3, a lot of games, bishop f3 mainly. So many games against Polgar, Gelfand, and I think Shirov also, and other players. So all in all, okay, it's a very dangerous system. The theory moved on and keep on moving on still here, but one of the main tests for the King's Indian players still nowadays, after you see 25 years, it still remains a main test. And Gary decided to play this system: knight f4, bishop f1, and now a5. So actually here, bishop a3 looks like a logical reaction against a5, but that was very well met by Boris Gelfand, before this game, maybe a couple of years earlier, that he played against me. I played bishop a3, and then the problem is it takes, because now black cannot play c5 because of d takes c6, and then the d6 pawn is hanging. But in general, c5 is a very annoying idea. So, but suddenly Gelfand played bishop g4, and here I realized that, okay, in case of c5, f5 might be very dangerous already because of this pin. And in case of h3, then black takes on f3. Of course, normally it's quite bad to give up this bishop in King's Indian, but it's tactical, because if I have to take with a queen, and then c5 comes. And in order to save the bishop, I have to take, and then I cannot avoid exchange the bishop for the knight, and the game was drawn pretty soon. So that's why this bishop a3 doesn't seem to be working. ba5, therefore, rook takes a5. Yes, this position was also quite popular for a while. I still believe it's, in a practical sense, it's not pleasant for black. I mean, it has some ideas. Gary, for instance, the way he played was very interesting. Actually, he found an interesting concept, but all in all, still, I think that, this is a bit more favorable for white, this position, especially since black is more playing strategically here. It's not really attacking. It doesn't have such a powerful attack, but more trying to stop white's play on the queen side. So using this tactical trick, bishop g4, so that I cannot really keep my pawn structure as it was. So I have to. Now it's becoming much more difficult to play c5, and actually black is playing c5 on their own. Here it's possible to start with a4, but probably it would lead to the same, more or less. I played knight d2 first. So the idea that, the point is that once black plays f5, it's very difficult to proceed. Actually, strangely enough, this knight on f4 is, in a way, is stopping black's play. Yeah, it's because with a knight on f6, very often black has this f4 g5 ideas. Here, I mean, usually white would just play a4, continue, developing play on the queen side. And what to do with black? I mean, fe, knight takes e4 is not good for black here. Maybe to play g5, but even though still not clear what is next, and white can always try sooner or later to take and put the knight on e4. So anyways, c5, that is what usually people played in this position. a4, just a useful move. Rook a6. Yeah, rook needs to be on a6 just to protect the d6 pawn. So more or less the black's idea is that rook on a6 and bishop on c8 are protecting the queen side. And on the king side, white has quite a full control with this rook e1, bishop f1, but black slowly tries to organize play. And, in a way, black pretends that, it's very difficult for white to do something very constructive, in this position. But I analyzed it for quite a while, because that was my main repertoire against King's Indian. And at that time, King's Indian was mainly because of Garry Kasparov, but also Boris Gelfand used to play it, Alexei Shirov, Topalov. So it was a popular opening at that time. At the time when the engines were non-existent or quite weak, good old days, you could have easily play on the top level even such slightly dubious opening. Now it's becoming more and more difficult because engines are very powerful, and they find more and more ways for white to pose problems in King's Indian. So I analyzed it a lot, and I decided for this following plan, which was quite new at that time, because normally white would try to put rook on b1, which is very logical, just kind of, trying to put pressure on the b7 pawn. But I had an idea that actually white's rook would be doing very well on the third rank. So my plan was to put knight on b5, rook on a3, bishop on b2, and actually sometimes even playing on the king side. I remember I decided that that would be my setup against this system, and I played rook a3 here. This rook a3 also has some prophylactic idea behind it, because I think I'm actually stopping black from playing f5 after rook a3 because, of course, white can always do knight b5 and continue. Probably black would just play g5 then. But the point is that actually white seems to be almost winning by playing g3. The knight is hanging, knight h5, e takes f5, just very tactical. And after knight takes f5, g4. Otherwise, if knight will get to d4, black will be doing fine. But after g4, I analyzed quite a lot. I remember at home this position before this game while preparing for this tournament. And because at that time engines were really weak and they would miss, they were really holding very much on tactical on the material advantage and would immediately start to say +3 here. But it's clear that things are not that simple. For example, after knight d4 take queen h4, but here knight c4 is very important move. And now you see, very important to have the rook on the third rank, because after bishop g4, finally white has f3 move, because the rook on a3 is protecting this pawn. So it was a very subtle actually idea against f5. So f5 doesn't seem to work. Then what white would usually do in these positions is trying to play king h8 and let's say followed by at some point by knight g8, let's say knight b5, knight g8, g3, knight h5. Yeah, the knight h3 probably is not working because now I can take and play g4. You see again, rook on a3 is very important. And after queen h4, I suppose rook g3 probably, and then threatening knight f3. It seems that black will lose a piece here. So black has to come back to h5, and true, white doesn't have actually much play on the, as usual in King's Indian, on the queen side, but also black cannot really manage f5 here. And my plan was in general here to try to play bishop b2, and actually maybe at some point to even to push f4. So because if you see the difference in this position, the rook on a6 is a bit stuck. Yes, it's protecting the d6 pawn. It's kind of taking care of the queen side, but it's not taking part in the game. And the rook on a3 can easily get to the king side. And here, again, f5 is never working because ef5, and since gf is not possible, the knight is hanging. So this is not good. And I think white is just better here, actually, because bishop d7, for instance, if this plan, let's say white can just improve position of his pieces, bishop g2, and I would even seriously consider trying to prepare f4 here. Let's say if black tries to do something at least constructive, like bishop e8, with the idea to play f5 and after ef to have gf, so the bishop would protect this knight. But then, for instance, I think that white has this very interesting idea of playing queen a1, and after f5 already f4. And I think that since this rook on a3, very easily get into the game, once the center is open, I think that, and black rook is out of play here. It seems to me that black is in real trouble in this position. So white has a very harmonious setup. And so I think it's not so great. That's why Gary came up with quite an interesting idea. I'm still a bit surprised he played this line, which is, it doesn't look great. Maybe because he was not expecting so much this rook a3 plan, but he had it's actually a very interesting idea. I don't think it fully works, but g5. So the point is, and that was new to me, so I started to think after g5, took quite some time to understand what to do, because the idea is just, let's say, knight b5, a standard move. Maybe black would just put his pawn on g4 now, and then followed by h5, and at some point f5. Yeah, so first doing this, then at some point to find the right moment to play f5. At least here, black has quite a clear plan. So that's why I decided to play something more direct. So I went g3 immediately, knight h3 check. Actually, interesting move here is g4. Okay, I'm not sure it works objectively so well, but in fact, it's a second line of engines after knight h3 check, but maybe it makes some sense because if I can of course play still knight b5, but then black wouldn't black would gain something, because white don't have to play g3 necessarily. So of course the test is to take this knight just for one pawn, but takes. So black tries to develop just some initiative. I mean, it's like a positional compensation for the piece. I mean, again, objectively, I have no doubt white is better. Here, it's not enough play for just a pawn because, after all, white is not getting mated really. But in a practical game, it could have been an interesting idea. At least, definitely, it would be quite shocking for me to see this g4 played over the board. Engines pretend that f3 is actually practically only move to secure an advantage for white, but still a move like h5, knight g6. Yeah, true, white is better if he plays correctly, but it was an interesting try because and very much in Gary's style actually. But he played knight h3 check, takes on h3, takes on h3, queen h5. That was my idea because of course otherwise I would never give up my bishop. Yes. White square bishop, but the problem is that I cannot really try to trap this bishop because, let's say, queen d7, f3, h5, for example, I'm not in time to trap. The g4 pawn is hanging. So the point was to play queen h5, and it has a tactical justification because in case of g4, knight f3 is very strong, and black is in real trouble because white is threatening knight g5. Of course, in case of gf, queen takes h3, let's say 5, bishop g5, white is just too active. Again, this rook on a6 is a bit out of play, and at some point, probably knight b5 will come, and the pawn on f3 will fall. So maybe black should try to do something like f6, at least to stop knight g5, but then knight h4, knight gets to f5, f3 is coming, so here black's position is pretty bad. Therefore, of course, queen d7 was the idea of Gary, and here probably the objectively best way. I saw the idea, but I was not sure about it during the game. Is f3. This is a very principal move because white just is threatening g4. The only move is g4, and knight d1, trying to go knight f2. Actually, it is. It's very dangerous, of course, because you see white actually has a very harmonious setup. The rook on a3 is very, very important. Yeah, in all those lines because it can quickly go into the king side. So white just wants to play knight f2. In case of gf, also knight f2. Even if this a4 pawn is hanging, it's still knight f2 is serious threat. But after f5, I was not totally sure about this position. Let's say knight f2, rook f6, and trying to play rook h6. But actually, now these engines pretend that after knight b1 move, white is better. Okay, maybe, but it's not obvious when you play a game. And also, I decided to take the pawn on g5, but I saw that there is play. It's not so easy after queen takes g5. Still, pawn is a pawn. Yeah. So now h6 was played by Gary. Maybe the better choice was to play f5. That is not playing for a win. It's more like trying to equalize, and with very accurate moves, black can actually manage to equalize after f5. But now the main difference is that, of course, now white would just take on f5 because if he plays like in the game f3, f4, then the queen on g5 is pretty much stuck there, and it's at least very dangerous for white. Maybe there is a move like knight e2, but doesn't look really doesn't look so great visually, at least. So my plan was to take on f5. The main idea is that I guess in case of h6, white would just play already queen h4, queen h5, attacking the bishop. So knight takes f5, knight b5. Then white wants to play knight e4, so knight d4, pretty direct play, takes, knight e4, for instance. And this position, it looks like white must be better. After all, he's a pawn up and quite active pieces. But according to engines, nowadays engines, black probably has enough resources to hold this position. So, but again, maybe even Gary saw it, but he wanted to play, in more aggressive fashion. So he went h6. Now I have to go to e3 already because otherwise I just losing my queen, for example, like this. It was not the idea to get my queen trapped. So queen s3, f5. Of course, ef5 is already not working because knight will take with a tempi and then will go to d4. That is not an option. I played queen e2, therefore, and f4. That is a concept of black. So, of course, sacrifice the pawn, but managed finally to get pawn on f4, eliminated a very important white square bishop. And, of course, black's bishop on h3 is well, it's a very powerful piece. So hard to say this, but still it's a pawn, and still the rook on a6 is still out of play. Yes, so I thought, okay, it doesn't look to be completely clear, but it's interesting. This position might be better actually for white. Well, it was possible to take and play knight f5, but after knight b5, okay, same type of position, but here white gets a better version, like just playing a5, bishop d2. I mean, again, some compensation for the pawn, but I believe I would definitely take white. Still, it's a pawn. Still, the knight on f4 is good, and I wouldn't go for it as black also. So Gary played f4. Now the point is I went knight b5. That is quite logical. Anyway, I will have to put my knight on b5 because first of all, I need to free the third rank for my rook, and secondly, this knight is pressing the d6 pawn. So from time to time, there is some tactics. As you will see, there is some tactics having this knight on b5, and in any case, it is the best square. So knight b5. King h7 was played. Well, maybe knight g6 first could have been played, but still king h1, the same story. King h7. And now, try to think about this position. If you are white, how would you proceed in this position? What would you do? What are the possible options? What is finally the concrete move you would try to play in this position if you are white? So, what did I think about this position? Okay, it's good to be pawn up, but there is not that much play for white here. And black has a quite easy way to proceed. Let's say probably knight g6 and bishop f6, maybe bishop d8, bishop a5, by the way, maneuver possible. Then trying to accumulate forces on the king side. And it will have definitely enough compensation for the pawn. But already when I was decided to take this pawn on g5, my idea was actually to counterattack, so to say, on the king side. And as you've seen already in my games against Garry Kasparov, well, I always wanted to fight for initiative. Intuitively, I felt like I should really try to avoid being on the defensive, even if I have a pawn. So I was trying always to create counterplay, to create some attacking possibilities. And you see, this time again, it actually worked very well. I decided to play g takes f4. Of course, it looks a little bit strange to play like this. It's against all standard rules of King's Indian. You're not supposed to open up the G line for your king. Also, after e4, black's bishop starts to become active. Maybe yes, but if you look closer at this position, I mean more detailed, deeper, then you understand that it's not so clear who is going to use the G line. Because again, my rook on a3 now is entering the game, is very active, and after all, if the game will get into the king side, I have an exchange up, because my knight on b5 is not taking part in the battle on the king side, but also rook on a6. So, exchange is quite something. So it's not clear who is going to attack whom. So, by the way, that's why maybe knight g6 move was a bit more accurate. I think Gary didn't expect gf4 at all. But still, I would probably try to proceed like this, king h1, maybe rook g1, and still trying, to create, maybe I want to play g4 at some point, to create some play connected with gf4, maybe, or g4. I mean, I was not planning just to put pawn on f3 and sit and wait. No. But still, probably knight g6 was more accurate. Because here after gf4, I wouldn't say it gives white an advantage, but the game, Black star needs to solve quite some problems because white is becoming, strangely enough, rather active in this position. So e4 was played, the most logical move, of course. Rook f4, actually, it was also possible, but it looks strange. King h1, so I just want to, obviously, to double my rook on g line and actually start an attack myself. So maybe black should try to do this, at least to force f3. Bishop h3 back. Okay, losing tempest, but at least the rook doesn't get to g3. Still, let's say, okay, the game can continue like this. Rook g1, knight g6, knight f1, rook f8, knight g3, knight goes to h5. And yeah, even if, again, according to modern engines, black is just slightly worse, no more than that. But already it's easier to play with white. White has some initiative, potential tactics on the G line. So I like white here. I would definitely not be totally satisfied playing black this position. So that's why ef4 is a logical move. King h1. Of course, we can imagine if black manages just his knight on e5 quickly and just to coordinate his pieces, white can easily be worse simply. But it's easier said than done. Actually, the position, yeah, I remember Gary before he was playing pretty quickly, and I actually was spending oceans of time. Maybe here I had only half an hour left already, while Gary just spent maybe 20 minutes. But here he started to think. I think he spent almost all his time on next 3-4 moves. Because he couldn't really understand. It's a very complicated position. He couldn't. He was hesitating. What is better? What plan? For instance, one option is to play rook g8 plan. Okay, the idea is that if you are trying to get knight g6, you're just not in time because of I guess few actually reasons. One of it is that I can always put knight on f3, for example. Second, that maybe there is some tactical idea knight c7. Sometimes, I'm not sure, I don't think it works here, but sometimes, because if queen c7, rook h3, but mainly just knight f3, rook g1, and I don't think black is really in time to manage it, unless he will transpose to the game, to the same position as in the game. So, but rook g8 maybe was an interesting option. Again, rook g1, bishop e5. That is what is our highest nowadays authority proposes. But it looks strange, and I mean looks really strange to put bishop on e5 instead of the knight. So knight f3 takes bishop g4, f3 bishop h5. So black just tries to blockade the position, not to let white's rook enter the game on a3. But of course lost quite some tempest here. But from other point of view, black just needs few moves: knight g6, rook a8, rook g8, and it can get quite dangerous for white. So, but the important issue is that after queen f1, black cannot stop queen h3 and has to change queens. And here, for instance, this position, black is just in time to hold, but no more than that. Because after all, it's still the pawn is a pawn, and white potentially has some maneuvers like knight c7, knight e6 in this position. So black, the only way to get a normal position is to play knight h4, bishop takes f4, take on f3 check, king g1, bishop takes e4, and finally it's still, according to engines, it's still a little bit better for white, but it looks like black should be in time to make a draw. I mean, taken on e5, d5, and so on. Knight f2 is it going on the line here. It's it's quite a sharp play, I think, but finally it ends in a draw with best play from both sides. But anyways, I mean, rook g8 is a strange move, but you see again, it's a bit counterintuitive to play rook g8. So Gary played in the most logical way. Bishop g4, same idea. He wants to get my pawn on f3, and if I do this, especially with one pair of rooks on the board, I think bishop h5, rook g1, knight g6, then black manages perfectly. I don't have this idea of exchanging queens, and I believe here black is simply better already because white's pieces are very passive. So definitely not f3 here. My idea was to play knight f3. Well, yeah, pinning myself, but the position is dynamic. By playing gf4, I started to play for dynamics. Yeah, so knight f3, I think it's very logical. I want to get rook g1, sometimes maybe to get e5 under some circumstances. So knight g6, logical move, rook g1. And this is a critical position of the game. And Gary, I think he took him like 50 minutes here. He was thinking and thinking. I was already, didn't know what to do. Looked at all the games played there. I had a walk. I took a couple of coffees. Of course, all this time thinking about the position, but Gary was thinking and actually came up with a very bad idea. I mean, frankly, tactically bad. I mean, I understand that. I understand what he wanted to achieve, but it just tactically doesn't work. Because probably the best move was knight h4. But I understand. Okay, it's playing for a draw, knight h4, because knight g5 check. That is the idea of white, that he wants knight g5 check, hg, queen takes g4, takes on g4, rook takes g4, and bishop f6. And well, frankly, it looks like. Of course, black wants to go knight g6 at some point, knight e5, but still it's a pawn, and I would. I think during the game I was assessing it as probably better for white, this position. Let's say bishop d2, but also I have sometimes this knight c7, knight e6 ideas. But strangely enough, according to to the highest authority in chess, black should be able to hold without too many difficulties here. But first of all, it's not really, it's not obvious for a human eye that it's a pawn down after all. Endgame, why should it be so good for black? But so it's not obvious first, and second, yeah, it's really like playing for a draw already here. And but the point is that, of course, king h8 is a logical move, just as a certain prophylactics against knight g5 check, and that would be definitely the move, if not knight c7. Yeah, this is knight c7 is a very unpleasant idea, and it seems that black is in trouble after knight c7, because of course in case of queen takes c7, rook takes g4, this is not good. Simply white is just a pawn up, so rook b6. And now another very, very important move, h3. Actually, very difficult to find over the board, but I'm sure Gary have found it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played. He would have played king h8 without a doubt. And it seems that here after h3, actually black is in big trouble, because bishop takes f3 check, rook takes f3. Of course, if queen takes c7, just taking on g6, just a pawn and actually a better position. So, and in case of knight h4, knight e6, and knight is just too strong. White is close to winning here. And again, if bishop h5, then knight e6, then I get this e6 square for the knight, and black's position starts to collapse as well. So king h8 doesn't seem to be the right move. Still, yeah, probably the only reasonable option was to play knight h4 and to try to make a draw in this endgame with very good chances. But Gary decided to play this operation. He took on f3, queen takes f3, knight e5, of course, very logical, attacking this the queen and the pawn on c4. So makes a lot of sense, but queen h5. But now, actually, as you can see, that actually white is really starting to have a serious attacking potential all of a sudden. For instance, you cannot take on c4 now because queen g6 check, and wherever king goes to g8 or h8, both ways, rook h3 is very strong and just winning, because I'm threatening rook takes h6 check, and in case of queen takes h3, of course, queen takes g7 mate. So, but Gary, his calculation was he went queen f7, and I think he miscalculated something. I mean, he missed quite a beautiful tactical resource, because probably his idea was, he thought that because of the c4 pawn hanging, white must exchange queens, and then it's true, take, let's say rook c3, f3. If somebody can claim something here, I mean, playing for advantage, it can only be black, because with this powerful knight on e5, and now already rook on a6 becomes actually quite a good piece, because a4 pawn is potentially hanging, and black is at least not worse here. So that was probably what Gary was hoping for, playing bishop takes f3 check, but he missed. He somehow, maybe since he was always playing for initiative, trying to organize an attack on my king during the game, I mean, during the previous move, somehow he just didn't, he missed the idea that actually his king can become very weak. And I came up with a powerful move, queen h3. And now black is in big trouble after queen h3, again, tactically, because, of course, one of the ideas for white is just queen e6. I want to change queens, and for example, in case of rook g8, a logical move, then queen e6 is very strong, and white is close to winning. If black tries to prevent queen e6 like rook e8, then bishop b2, and again, it's pretty obvious that black's position is quite dramatic, because white is pawn up and all his pieces are very active. So here, the knight takes c4, that was Gary's idea, take on c4, rook f3, bishop e5. And I guess a4 pawn is hanging, and I guess he thought that would give him a good position. And now, but there is one powerful move white has in his pocket. So I will give you a bit of time to think about it and to find the best way to proceed with white here. So something which Gary have missed a few moves ago, playing bishop takes f3. It is not too difficult, but actually quite elegant and beautiful. Knight c7. Knight c7, yes, quite a nice motive, because of, easy to miss it when you already get into this position. It's pretty obvious, but when you're playing bishop takes f3, it's easy to miss such a move, knight c7, because the idea is that after queen c7, queen takes a6 check, king takes a6, rook h3 mate, very nice mate. And when the knight enters to e6, this is just crushing. Knight c7 is just, with knight on e6, black, especially having rook on a6, has no chance to defend. So I remember that Gary, kind of started to shake his head after knight c7. I even had a feeling that he saw it only when I played it, because he had a shock reaction after this knight c7, because somehow queen on f7, protecting the knight, protecting the square. So he just totally missed the idea, and but there is nothing you can do anymore after this. So he took on a4. What else? And bishop takes f4, the most energetic move now. So white is just starting to crush black on the king side, which is actually logical. He has more pieces. The rook on a4, knight on c4, two pieces are out of the king side, and white has such a concentration of forces there that it's no surprise that white is simply mating. So, and here Gary actually just resigned immediately on move 32 already, because after bishop takes f4, it's very simple line. Knight e6, everything is threatening. Rook takes f4 at least. So rook g8, rook takes g8. Now, if intermediate check, white just comes back to g1 winning. So, and in case of, let's say queen takes g8, then queen f5 check. Okay, otherwise rook a1 is threatening, but not in time, because now if queen g6, of course, knight f8, there is knight f8 check. So, and after king h8, queen f6 check, king h7, knight f8 check. And black has to give up the queen, and of course is losing. So after bishop takes f4, Gary resigned. So another example of this kind of fight. One more actually already, by far not the first one, and during this course, you see how two players are fighting for the right to attack. So even So it's a possible option, that even if you are under certain attack, like this, you can create certain counter attack using the fact that usually if your opponent is attacking, quite often it also requires opening up your king. Yeah, if you want to open up your opponent's king, sometimes you need to push pawns to open up your king. And actually, in King's Indian, especially from time to time, usually if Blake is playing on the queen side, White, sorry, is playing on the queen side, trying to break through there, and Blake is trying to mate White on the other side of the board. But sometimes White actually gets his counter attack and using the fact that Blake open up his king. So you will see, by the way, another game, I think, in this course on the same motive, that finally Blake got mated in King's Indian, trying to advance his pawns on the king side. So this is and here, you see that at some point, it's the attack started to be very dangerous. Yeah, so it's like both players were attacking. In fact, so it was just a matter of one move, one accurate or inaccurate move. Like, for example, in this position, if f3, bishop h5, rook g1, knight g6, it could have easily finished in a mating attack already from the black side. I mean, just mating White's king slowly, like bishop e5, rook a8, rook g8. Here, one mistake, actually only one mistake, bishop takes f3 check, and the game and the White's attack became unstoppable already. Okay, it was a nice victory. It was a nice day for me. I remember it very well. And then see you next on the next lesson. I think from now on I will start to jump a bit in time. We will use a time machine and move to quite a number of years later, around 2010 and so on. So let's say already second part of my chess career, where I also had some attacking games and mated some opponents. Already not Gary, but maybe some other world champions. We will see. So I think, we will start with my late chess career games.